Hey there stranger, my name is miizmi and once a week I make videos discussing movies I find particularly interesting. And this week I want to talk about A Cinderella Story Once Upon a Song. This is one of my favorite movies as a kid and I don't really see too many people talking about it on YouTube. It more or less seems like the Cinderella remake that no one really remembers, or maybe it's just the one that everyone wants to pretend never happened. Because I will say when I was rewatching this, it's basically the more problematic version of Another Cinderella Story with a dash of racism, cultural appropriation, and an overly douchey fuckboy to boot. So let's get started. The movie opens with a music video dream sequence in which our main character Katie sings about making it big someday. And yes, Another Cinderella Story started the exact same way because, interestingly enough, this movie was created by the same company and director. So if there are any scenes or plot points that seem familiar, it's probably because you've already seen it. I have to say though, this song really reminded me of just how good the soundtrack for this movie was. Because yes, they're actually amazing songs that stand on their own, but also regard the movie forward in interesting ways. It's just the editing of this scene that kills me though. Which, quick warning, there will be a lot of flashing light, but honestly, what the heck is this nonsense? Like, are we even saying the same thing? But the thing that really bothered me the most is one line where she sings. Great line by the way, but she kisses the screen so intensely at the exact same moment that word ass is on, and just the combination of the word ass and the scrunched red lips just yeah, no, sorry, this is really not for me. But anyways, Katie's dream is interrupted by her stepbrother Victor, who casually jumps off. No, not even jumps off, just falls off her bed to his death, but somehow miraculously survives the fall, and Katie starts her day racing from her shack into the main house, where we get our first glimpse of the heavy Indian influence in the household, despite none of the main characters actually being Indian. And we see how hectic her life is, with Victor playing pranks on her, her stepsister Bev being rude, and her stepmother Gail being a demanding, well, Karen for lack of a better word.
And make that water more quiet!
She drives into school where Gail meets with a famous music producer named Guy, who wants to enroll his son and allow him to host a semester showcase to find the next big hit. Here we're introduced to loveboy Luke, who makes flirty eyes with Katie, and they have a moment where she fangirls about his band before Beth comes in to take him on a tour and he promptly forgets about her existence. Real charming. Katie sneaks a CD into Guy's suitcase, and outside we're introduced to our sassy, eccentric, ethnic friend.
She shoots, she scores. Unlike you, soccer boy.
While Luke gets mobbed by all the two people wanting to use him to further their career, only to be saved by the other ethnic friend, Mickey, whose role is only to be a supportive friend with no disconcerting ambitions or storyline of their own. At home, Gail is meditating with her teacher Ravi, who we later find out isn't from India or even has a stereotypical accent.
Miss Katie, I am most startled. All right. Don't hate me. Okay, don't hate me. I'm sorry, but my name ain't Ravi.
And in fact, there's a guy named Tony, who's an aspiring actor working in a deli shop in New Jersey when Gail walked in and asked him to be her spiritual guru because he looked Indian. To me, this entire plot point was a complete cop-out, so that way they could have Ravi make up whatever nonsense he wanted.
If your body is suffering, then you are suffering. In fact, your entire life is suffering. Why? Because you crave that which is meaningless.
Are you calling me Shelley?
Instead of actually having explained real elements of Hinduism or aspects of Indian culture, which makes the whole Bollywood theme of the ball even that more ridiculous and pointless, since they never actually explain it. And the only reason it's themed that way is because Gail is in her spiritual phase, which is pretty insensitive and ridiculous. But at the same time, I don't really put it past a Karen to decide to take someone's culture and religion and use it as a spiritual phase they're going through. We could have kept the theme with just a few tweaks and made it not only culturally accurate, but unique. If they just made Prince Charming Indian, he still could have been the son of a music mogul, or even a Bollywood star himself, who's traveling to the States to find an American co-star. They could have kept all the Bollywood theming, and maybe have made Katie the only one that doesn't make it a big deal, or the only one who actually studied the culture since, I don't know, she wanted to be an exchange student or something. That way it's more authentic. Then again, having an ethnic male lead in a romance movie is quite the scandal, especially back in the day, since we can't even do it now, so I might be asking too much. So let's get back to the actual story. The entire family gather at dinner as Gail tells her sob story of why she didn't ever make it in life. Spoiler, it's because she's untalented, which isn't really a surprise, and why it's important for her to make an impression on Guy. So Bev shows off her non-existent singing skills. After dinner, Victor decides to mess with Katie again and sprays her with condiments, and while she showers, with the doors unlocked for some reason, he steals her clothes and pushes her outside naked. And this entire scene was pretty inappropriate for a PG-rated movie. I'm not talking about her nudity, because they cover up, obviously. No, I'm talking about Victor as a character, because this is supposedly a fun, light-hearted scene of him pulling one of his pranks on her, but first, who actually does this? And especially to their older sister, and looks so smug and happy doing it. If this is just one scene in question, maybe we could overlook it, but it's shown that he actually has multiple cameras hidden throughout the house, and all of their location is suspect. It's one thing to have cameras in the general living area for surveillance purposes. However, it's another thing entirely for him to have cameras in his sister's room pointing at her mirror, and you can actually see her bed in the background. Another one in Katie's room pointing directly to her bed. Later we also see another camera angle pointing at yet another bed in the living room. And why they have a bed in the living room, I don't really know. But all of these have cameras pointing at beds, which is very uncomfortable. It's even shown later that he has a recording of his sister and mother on his laptop. And while I understand these were all just to move the story along and have different angles, and I don't think the writers put those in deliberately to make him look creep, it definitely raised some red flags as a rewatch, especially because he says he controls all the logs on the property, including her shack. And from the very beginning, it's already been shown that he has a tendency and ability to willingly sneak into her room, and altogether this makes for a very weird and concerning dynamic, especially if this is all happening in real life regardless of his age. But I digress. Katie then resorts to wearing a welcome mat as she pounds on the door when Loverboy Luke shows up and, true to his fuckboy self, decides to flirt with her while she's stuck outside.
That's not complicated. That is a gift from God.
Which, can I just say, gross? Like, dude, how about you not try and take advantage of her when she's in a vulnerable situation, being outside, stuck, and naked, and having to talk to a strange man she met just a day ago. Not cute. Then when Bev opens the door, Loverboy Luke completely forgets about her existence. Once again, that's twice in a row in about a 5-minute time span. And might I remind you, this is supposed to be our Prince Charming, which I just have to ask why. He has so far shown that he's a complete horn dog, being flirty with her while she's naked. And the second he sees a hot blonde, his mind goes blank and he forgets his concern for her, and doesn't even check to make sure that she gets inside the house, despite spending the seconds he wasn't flirting with her, banging on the door for her to be let in. Again, real charming. Meanwhile, Katie makes it back to her shack and gets pulled inside by Gail, who threatens to lock Katie in the basement because while she was flirting with fuckboy Luke, his dead guy had called her phone to talk about her music. But Gail answered instead and found out about the CD Katie snuck Guy. She then proceeds to make Katie sing to evaluate her skills, which results in this fabulous song.
Like a malignant tumor, she's got no sense of humor. Just like a swollen blister, it's best to just resist her. She's not exactly a witch, she's just a terrible bitch.
Back at the house, Gail interrupts the almost makeout session between Bev and Luke,
Do you know what other instruments I'm good at?
doing the only good thing she'll ever do in this movie, and throws his ass out before creating a plan for Bev to lip sync over Katie's singing, threatening Katie's inheritance if she doesn't comply. And for some reason we get two scenes back to back, the same composition when Katie's being threatened. The next day at school, Luke gets serenaded by and bops to Or Major.
When you're fighting just to keep it sane, throw your will at the eye of the hurricane. Sing it out, ayo, ayo, ayo. Help me sing it out, ayo, ayo, ayo. Bring your dreams into your life.
And yes, their name is Oral Majority.
Okay, dude, those guys, they just went oral majority me in that.
While Katie hides in the practice room lamenting her poor life and ends up hearing Luke sing, which again, really great song.
My soul's in debt, but my bills are paid. I give anything just to make an escape. Oh, 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 oh. So you can keep knocking, knocking, knocking. Maybe you're knocking, but there ain't no way I'm ever letting you in. Not again.
She writes a beautiful song in response to his, and her best friend Angela encourages her to sing it to him at the ball and gives her a dress. And unlike other Cinderella movies, the ball was probably mentioned all of 2 times before then, and rather than being the main event in the movie, it seemed more like the next most convenient time to meet doucheboy. And the whole ethnic friend giving a dress to the white girl is such an overdone trope. It's also completely unnecessary in this movie, because at least with the other versions, they had reasons. In a Cinderella story, Sam is gifted a dress from Rhonda because they couldn't find anything at the Halloween store, and Rhonda was kind enough to lend Sam her wedding dress. In another Cinderella story, Tammy made them both dresses because she's a fashion student. And in Ella Enchanted, Lucinda gives Ella a dress out of spite and kindness.
And I guess being the one that provides dress isn't good enough because they almost always make the ethnic friend also force the dress onto Cinderella.
A pretty girl like you should be at the ball.
What? No! Why go and pretend like I do? Guys don't even know I exist.
You're going to the ball.
Rhonda, I can't wear that.
Yes, you can. And you will.
In this movie, Angela just gives it to her with a note that reads, "You deserve it." But might I ask what for? When in this entire movie did Katie ever do anything for Angela? Focus on her struggles. Spoiler, she doesn't, and will not for the rest of the movie. Never did they once have a conversation that had anything to do outside of Katie. And it's not even like she was Indian, so the writers could be like, well, see, an Indian girl said it was okay, but I guess for them, any South Asian is good enough. And for them, the two of them in particular never really talked about going to the ball, except for when Angela teasingly told Katie that she should ask Luke to the ball when they first met. But that was never a concrete thing. It was never established that they themselves would have gone to the ball if Luke wasn't there, which means she bought this dress out of nowhere. And again, what for? While Katie admires her dress, Gail runs to the shack to tell Katie to clean up cat poop, which obviously was only put there for this next stupid scene to exist, because why would Gail inconvenience herself with going all the way to the shack in the middle of the night to get Katie to do something rather than, I don't know, just text her? Because in later shots of the movie, it is established that phones are a thing that exists in this world and they use it. And if she doesn't want to use a cell phone, then why don't they have something in place like a radio system or something so that way they have easy communication? But it just doesn't make sense that someone who lives so lavishly and doesn't do anything for themselves, like Gail, would inconvenience herself and have to walk all the way out to the shack every time she needs something done. This also happens later with Bev, so yeah, these are just put in there to create some tension. But they have a comical scene where Katie and Angela freak out, and Katie ends up just chucking the box at Angela before Angela throws herself out the window, and Katie sucks at being inconspicuous because she just leaves the box in plain sight rather than, I don't know, just tossing it behind her head, and she's so careless with it anyways. Or if they wanted to keep the essence of the scene, they could have just had her stuff the dress underneath all her pillows and throw the box, again, behind her back, or pull out all the socks and yarn or whatever from there. But she wasn't careful enough, so Gail still sees the peak of the dress from underneath her pillows. But regardless, Gail puts Katie on victor duty because of the stunt she pulled today.
After what you pulled today with Guy. Oh, no. Oh, no.
And that was pretty confusing because I think this all happened in one day. Fuckboy Luke came to town, Katie snuck his dad a CD, and now they're getting ready for a ball. Again, all in one day. That just doesn't quite make sense. Especially since near the beginning of the movie, Mikey asked if Luke was going to the ball on Saturday. Not tonight, but Saturday.
You got a girl for the dance on Saturday? Because I can hook you up.
But this actually leads to Katie finding out that Ravi is actually Tony, like mentioned earlier. And she in a way blackmails him to watch Victor instead.
Your secret's safe with me, okay? But I need to ask you a favor.
Which allows her to go to the ball. Once there, she spots him after another urinal serenade for him. And proceeds to serenade him herself.
You wanna fly and leave your worries behind, don't you? Well, now I'm knocking at your front door. You can never tell where this might go.
While Angela distracts Gail with a dance-off that honestly was and still is my favorite part of this movie. This is a scene that stuck in my head as a little kid, especially the scene with the darkened room and the spinning lantern. I just absolutely love it so much, and it still holds up during the rewatch, although perhaps this scene not so much. But honestly, I can't see how anyone would be happy after watching this scene because it's just so beautiful. Everything from the outfits to the lively music to the energetic dance is just so fun and vibrant and full of life. And it's the best scene in this movie, hands down. But Angela, for some reason, decides to take off her mask during the middle of the dance, which is completely unnecessary. An example of lazy writing, because this way, later Angela is able to recognize her. But anyways, Gail ends up having bowel issues and rushes home. Meanwhile, back to our couple, Katie starts to take off her mask, but Angela interrupts and drags her away, rushing her home, thinking they got away. But as Katie runs into her shack, Gail is there. Katie is threatened a second time, now with Angel's future on the line. The next day at school, Luke waxes on about her enticing eyes and has a recording of her voice, which his friend apparently already looked up a list of singers in the school, which I don't really understand why then they're acting as if this is the first time that Luke has ever shown Mikey her singing. So they go to the class where all the singers are, and Luke gets harassed by a fan while Katie is in the studio recording for Bev. For some reason, at the point they decide to add a Scooby-Doo like chasing, it doesn't really feel consistent with the whole tone of the movie. But it does go to show just how popular our Prince Charming is, since he only has one crazy fan and a teacher chasing him, which when you compare him to Joey in Another Cinderella story, their level of fame definitely starts to show. While trying to catch his breath, Luke hears Katie's voice nearby and walks into Bev lip syncing, mistakenly claiming her as his mystery woman because this guy is a complete moron and apparently can't decipher eye colors, despite the fact that he sat close and personal and made it a point to mention a couple different times how enticing her eyes were.
Your exquisite eyes tell of a radiant but mischievous beauty. Like only her eyes were piercing at me through this veil.
And again, I suppose I can't be too harsh on him because all Prince Charmings at this point have been completely clueless, unobservant men who can't differentiate between women, even when they take minimum efforts to conceal themselves. And honestly, if he wanted the quickest way to find her, rather than having to go through the singers, even though that was a small group anyways, he honestly could have just tried to look for the Asian girl, okay? Because speaking as an Asian myself, who has been in schools where I was literally the only Asian out of the entire school, well, okay, there was my sibling, and then maybe one other person, but that's like 3 students in a school of thousands of students. So yeah, I stand out. And it's very noticeable that even if people didn't know me, and I didn't know them, they knew about me. So again, if he was actually observed, he would have noticed that Angela didn't have her mask. And if he just memorized her face, which would have been really easy since, again, she's like the only Asian in this entire school, you could have found her pretty easily. Anyways, he asked her on a date after giving her a spot in the showcase without her having to audition because it's kind of rigged. And on said date, Luke and Bev step into an exceedingly awkward, stilted conversation as Bev can't seem to read Katie's text responses properly.
Does that sound stupid?
Yes.
Sorry?
Today, it would have to be Moose.
Do you mean Muse?
His voice was just like an angle.
An angle?
Yeah, it would be like a right angle. You know, it would start out at 90 degrees, and then it would just take you somewhere that you never expected you would go.
The night ends with a waterlogged phone and Bev's grandma allegedly croaking.
You know what? I'm so sick of using your word. I don't need you. I can do this on my own. Luke wants me.
So, let's talk classical music. Okay? Tchaikovsky, you are a Swan Lake girl, aren't you?
I have bad news. My grandma croaked.
The next day, he comes over to write a song with Bev and bonds with Victor for a second by teaching him a bit of guitar. It's actually a really sweet scene because as you can see, Victor is quite a destructive, rambunctious child. No doubt acting out because he's been neglected and ignored by his family. To have someone pay attention and notice that he likes to play guitar was a really sweet scene. But of course, his fuckboy nature can't be dormant for long, and he flirts again with Katie while being there to see Bev.
Hey! I keep running into you here, but no partial nudity this time. You always seem to disappear. I really wish you wouldn't.
And just has to say, the standards for Prince Charming is exceedingly low in this movie because it's been shown throughout this entire movie that he's a horn dog who flirts with both sisters. I mean, at least other Cinderella remakes, despite him having prior dalliances with his exes, he never has a thing for the stepsister. In this scenario, he flirts with both of them, and for some reason, they decided to fight for his affection. But what for? Just because he's a conventionally attractive guy? And ladies, let's please have better standards for our men, because this whole thing was just a no-go. He's just not worth it. Victor then sets Katie and Bev with earpieces to allow Bev to share Katie's lyrics as she writes with him. And again, the song was beautifully sung acoustically, except for a weird line that didn't quite fit.
Don't say it doesn't fit. Don't say it doesn't fit before you try it on. Before you try it on.
There's too much to lose to be wrong, and it feels like there's something here, but I wanna see it before it disappears. And if there's something real between me and you, well, are we both open to all these possibilities?
But this is enough to sweep him off his feet, and he feels the connection, so he kisses Bev before they're interrupted by Katie and Victor asking about pies. Katie runs off to her shack for a pity party, but Gail is there once again and decides to threaten her for yes, a third time, which makes spying Tony and Victor to offer their help to overthrow Gail.
That woman is a demon spawn from darkness itself. I wish she'd go straight back to hell. Hello, Miss Gale.
But Katie makes him promise not to do anything. She heads to her shack to fold laundry when Bev barges in with hectic energy and reveals she's actually nervous about tonight, which gives us a glimpse of her true character.
I'm nervous about tonight. Oh my god, why did I just tell you that?
And honestly, I really wish they would have leaned heavier on this Bev isn't a terrible person, because unlike other Cinderella villains or stepsisters, she isn't completely irredeemable. And if anything, is just a product of her environment and upbringing. You can see that she was raised by a narcissistic mom who simultaneously made her believe she's the center of the world while also breaking her down and making her feel absolutely worthless. For example, when Gail was drinking earlier,
Now look at me. Now look at me. I got 2 ungrateful kids, a dwarfish, hairy, elfin servant, and a random tablecloth-wearing Asian.
Why don't you have another drink, Mom? My voice teacher says that I have transcended to a whole new level.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Well, when my first single drops, I'll buy you that mansion in the Hollywood Hills.
or when she was singing, because although she doesn't have the skill, she was so excited. Instead of trying to support her or give her critiques, Gail just insulted her.
There ain't enough auto-tune in the world that's gonna fix you, bunny.
And the only time Gail was actually supportive or encouraging is when Bev shows insecurities and questions her plans. After tearing her down, Gail builds her back up just so she can get her way.
Why don't you just have her perform if you like her so much?
Because, honey, look at you. You are a star. That is what Guy Morgan needs. You, the star.
Bev might even have body insecurities because before her almost makeout session, Bev said something really interesting.
You know, my stepsister, she has body issues, so I don't like to discourage her nudity.
And later at the dance, Gail actually calls her own daughter a pig.
Did you just call me a pig? Honey, I saw you making sweet love to a plate of Swedish meatballs at the snack table.
And then talks about assets.
Oh, honey, the prize pig doesn't win the blue ribbon by covering up its third best asset.
And from what we know from Gail, I highly doubt that she was talking about brains and personality. Not only that, but even before the ball took place, Gail was already hinting at Bev to use her body to her advantage. I'm not saying that Bev is a faultless person or doesn't deserve what's coming to her, because she's responsible for her own actions, despite what trauma she might have. But like I said, she's not completely irredeemable, and she has moments where she shows she could grow, and the two of them could have had a sisterly bond.
You think I'm talented? If you ever tell anyone I said that, I'll deny it. Wear the blue blouse. It makes your eyes pop.
I'm not expecting her to turn into a good guy by the end of the movie. I just wished she had a come to Jesus moment, because it could have been done while still keeping her brattiness and kept her true to her character. For example, right before performing, you could have just said, you know what? I don't want to do this anyways, so I guess you can have it. It would have been even more interesting if they fleshed out her character arc a bit more. And we could see that during her practice, she realized that singing isn't really her thing, but maybe dancing was. Or maybe she somehow got involved in the theater and realized that she actually just loves to perform and being that center of attention, but that it doesn't have to be through someone else's merit, that she can have her own talents and skills. So that way she can indulge her need for validation, but also have her own thing and learn it doesn't have to live in someone else's shadow. Because the sad thing is, in this scene with Katie, you can tell Bev isn't just some dumb, blonde bimbo like she portrays herself as. She's very aware of how people perceive her.
Not really singing. All you have to do is stand there and look pretty. Have you ever thought about how that makes me feel? You have talent. You could go on American Idol and forget about the rest of us. This is like my only chance. Pretty doesn't last very long.
And she believes all of that herself. And that's what's holding her back. She doesn't feel like she's capable of doing anything, because she doesn't have any confidence in herself. So yeah, it would have been nice to see her character development and see her fleshed out a little bit more. But anyways, back to the story. Nighttime comes and the showcase begins, and there's only a total of 2 acts, not even including Angela, despite the fact that she's completely dressed, and even seen practicing in the background, when Gail, once again for the 4th time in this movie, threatens Katie. This entire scene is also just so unnecessary, because the only reason they have her there is that she can overhear and be like, wow, Katie, you're such a good person, making yourself a martyr for the poor Asian girl. Despite the fact that Angel was also being threatened by Gail.
Gail's been threatening me too.
But we're not going to talk about that. Despite the fact that she doesn't have an inheritance to fall back on like Katie does, the consequences of being targeted by a rich, influential white woman would be 10 times worse for her than it would be for Katie. But sure, Katie is a true victim here because she can't have Prince Charming and her inheritance too. G. The struggle is real. Now the main act, Bev, begins, and midway through, Tony and Victor disconnect the audio track and destroy the phone, leading to fuckboy Luke finding Katie backstage preparing to sing for Bev.
Because Gail, for some reason, doesn't even attempt to stop him and just lets him backstage.
This idiot is still incapable of connecting the dots, and he actually asked her why she's about to sing for Bev.
You're about to sing for Bev. Why are you about to sing for Bev?
Like, why do you think, you idiot? You literally have all this information handed to you on a silver platter, and you still can't use the 2 brain cells you have to come up with a logical conclusion? Again, ladies, can we please have some type of standard for our men? Why is this dumbass our Prince Charming? He's a moron through and through. First, unable to determine that his mystery woman has brown eyes, notices some inconsistency in Bev's character.
You can't talk to Luke about it. He'll just say something like, "Oh, one minute you're talented and we're connecting, and the next minute you're self-involved and histrionic."
He continues to be with her because she's hot, which doesn't exactly show great character on his part. And now that he sees Katie's about to sing for Bev, he still can't comprehend the situation without it being force-fed to him. I mean, what did he think she was going to say? Like, oh, Bev's just running a bit of a cold, so I'm just dubbing in for her. But don't worry, so just for this one time, but Bev totally sung every other time. Like, no, you dumbass. Clearly, that means Bev can't sing. And Katie has been the one singing this entire time. Obvious. I just want a Prince Charming who's actually charming and not a fuckboy with something that's actually going on upstairs. Is that too much to ask? But fuckboy Luke proves himself to be semi-useful and brings the camera back so Katie can have her moment, which leads to her winning the show.
I'm legit, I'm no counterfeit. There's no need for someone else. There's no one to blame. There's no one to save you but yourself. I can justify all the mistakes in my life.
Which is pretty rigged, of course, since fuckboy Luke has had a bias towards his mystery woman this entire time, and he's the one hosting the show while his father is the one paying for all of it and also the one giving the prize out at the end. So it's really no surprise that she's the one who won and offered a deal to create an album with Luke. At the end of the movie, Guy reports Gail, forcing her to return to her old country roots, and the movie just ends. And while it's very enjoyable to see Gail get her comeuppance, it doesn't really give a good conclusion, because we never really see what happens to Bev, even though she seems to be done with her mom.
Give it up, Mom.
And we also don't see what happens to Victor, because he's betrayed his mom, and knowing Gail, she's not really gonna let that slide. And we also never figure out what happened to Angela and her scholarship, because I'm gonna assume that since Gail was put away, that she was able to get a scholarship, but there's really no guarantee with that. We also don't get to know about Tony, and if he had to return to his deli shop now that he's not working as a fake spiritual guru. We also never really understand what happens to Mickey, because they all end up cheering once they hear the news that Katie gets a record deal with Luke. But I don't really understand why they would all cheer, because if we're being generous, then we can assume that Angela will be part of it because she'll choreograph their dancing, I suppose. But I'm not really inclined to believe that, because they didn't even use her in the showcase, despite the fact that she's already dressed, practicing. And the craziest part is they don't even give her a part as Katie's backup dancer. And it would make sense if Katie just took over and the backup dancer, since they had a choreograph for Bev, that's why they were the ones dancing. But Katie doesn't even do the dance that Bev does. They do a completely new routine.
To a completely different song with 2 additional dancers who aren't even wearing the same thing as the other dancers, but as you'll notice, neither of them are Angela.
I mean, Angela does come out at one point to steal Katie's jacket, and you see her wear the jacket but also not wear the jacket, but she's only at the very end scene where everyone comes out to dance, which is pretty shitty, because again, she's a choreographer, she's a dancer. You have her dressed and ready to dance, but you don't even use her. So why would I be inclined to believe that if you create a new album and you have a music video that you would employ Angela in there? You wouldn't. And Angela deserved better, okay? It's bullshit. But all that doesn't matter anyways, since they were only included to show diversity. So yeah, that was the movie. I know I was complaining the entire time because, well, there is quite a few problems with this movie. But if I'm being completely honest, I kind of still like this movie, despite all its problematic issues and themes. And maybe it's just the nostalgia talking, but it's actually quite enjoyable rewatching. And I think the reason why I actually prefer this over Another Cinderella story, despite them having basically the same plot, is because, again, even though it's very problematic the way they went about it, they still had a more interesting concept. And I didn't really mention it any other time in the movie, which I should have, but they actually have quite a few adult-like humor.
You pray all day. I don't feel nothing.
That's because you don't have a soul. I have many souls. I'll give you one.
Where's your third eye? Why don't you turn that thing on?
I have a 4th eye too. Do you want to see it later?
Which is, again, more enjoyable to rewatch because I'm not really someone who rewatches Disney movies on a consistent basis, but every once in a while when I do, the acting obviously it makes me cringe a little bit. So even though I really did like Another Cinderella Story, it's very hard for me to watch that again, especially knowing the age difference between Selena Gomez and the lead actor. I don't even remember his name. I think his name is Drew, right? But because this one has a lot more interesting themes and also adult-like humor, it makes everything a lot more fun to watch. So I'll probably be roasted for having this opinion because it's quite unpopular, but I really do think Once Upon a Song is a better rewatch than both Another Cinderella Story and A Cinderella Story. But now that you're all aware that I have complete trash taste in movies, that's really all I have to say for this video. So if you made it all the way through, thank you so much for watching. And with all that being said, I've been me, aka miizmi, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!